Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name's Peter. When I found out my wife was sleeping with our financial advisor while planning to take everything from me, my world fell apart. I loved her so much, and I'll be telling you how everything turned out. I first met Caroline when she walked into my office to pitch the services of the company she worked for. At the time, I had been running my own business for about 3 years. Things weren't perfect, but the business was finally starting to take off. I'd gotten through the hard part, and I was just beginning to see the rewards. So when she came in talking about how her company could help streamline some of my operations and offer support in ways I hadn't considered, I listened. Caroline was confident, and she clearly knew what she was talking about. I ended up signing on with her company. It seemed like a smart business decision at the time. But what I didn't realize then was that the decision would also change the course of my personal life. Our communication didn't stop at work emails. At first, it was casual, a follow-up call here and a check-in message there. Then we started talking about more than just business. She'd ask how my day was going, and I'd ask about hers. Slowly but surely, those conversations became something I looked forward to. Before I knew it, we were grabbing coffee, then having dinner. Those dinners turned into dates, and after a couple of months, we officially started seeing each other. Caroline wasn't just beautiful. She was intelligent and driven. And most importantly, she understood the pressures I was under running a business. She didn't just listen when I talked about work. She contributed, gave suggestions, asked the right questions. It was like having a partner who genuinely cared about the things I cared about. We connected deeply over our goals. We both wanted financial stability, long-term security, and to eventually build something lasting, not just in love, but in business too. That kind of alignment, I thought, was rare. After 2 years of dating, we got married. I felt like the luckiest man alive. Caroline and I always talk about the future. It just made sense to bring her into the business. We were already building a life together. So why not build a business too? I remember suggesting it to her one night over dinner. I told her I wanted her to quit her job and come work with me full-time to become the head of sales. She had a way with people, she could sell, she understood numbers, and she could hold her own in any negotiation. I genuinely believed she would add value and help us grow. See, when Caroline and I were dating, everything felt easy. We had fun and clicked when we talked business. But little things started popping up after we got married and began living and working together full-time. Things I now see were red flags waving in my face the whole time. I noticed how often she talked about and made comparisons to other people's success. At first, I thought she was just trying to motivate me. Push me to dream bigger or work harder. That's how I tried to rationalize it, but with time, I started realizing she wasn't encouraging me. She was measuring me. Against other men. Against their lifestyles. Their money. Their wives. Still, I didn't make a big deal out of it. I mean, marriage isn't perfect. Everybody says things. And I trusted her. Then, about a year into the marriage, Caroline came to me one evening with what sounded like concern. She told me she had reviewed our investments and felt that my longtime financial advisor wasn't doing a good job. According to her, the returns weren't where they should be. She said, "Look, I've been looking into the numbers, and for the kind of money we have, we should be seeing more growth." That took me by surprise because I had been working with my advisor for years. He'd been loyal, transparent, and consistent. The kind of person you stick with when it comes to money. Then she suggested a replacement. Some guy she knew from way back. She said he was excellent with taxes, retirement planning, investments, basically a financial wizard. I didn't know who he was. Never heard of him. And more importantly, I didn't ask for a change. I told her I'd think about it, but honestly, I just said that to cool the conversation down. I assumed she'd let it go after a few days. But she didn't. A week later, she brought it up again. This time with more energy. She said things like, "This guy works with high net worth clients. He knows how to multiply wealth, not just manage it." She was persistent, almost too eager. Her insistence felt like pressure, not concern. But at the time, I let myself believe she just wanted what was best for us. After all, some of her suggestions in the past had genuinely helped the business grow. So, despite that uneasy feeling sitting at the back of my throat, I agreed to let my old advisor go and give this new guy a shot. The first time I met him, he came across just like Caroline described, charismatic, sharply dressed, well-spoken. You could tell he dealt with big clients. He had that aura. I remember thinking, maybe this isn't such a bad move after all. But I was wrong. So wrong. What I didn't realize at that point was that this wasn't just about switching advisors. It was the start of something deeper, more twisted. Something I wouldn't fully understand until it was almost too late. I brought the new financial advisor on board, and not long after he came into the picture, Caroline started acting different. She suddenly became obsessed with money and felt like she needed to control every single thing related to it. She started asking for passwords to accounts. Not just our joint accounts, but my personal business accounts too. At first, I thought maybe she was just stepping up, trying to help out more with our financial planning. But then she started using these very formal-sounding phrases. She'd say things like, "We need to protect our assets," or "We need legal clarity in case anything happens." I asked her what she meant, and she talked about updating our wills and setting up a power of attorney. She said it was smart to plan ahead, that it's what smart couples with growing wealth do. And again, on the surface, it sounded responsible. So even though it felt sudden and strange, I let it slide because I trusted her. But while she was getting more and more involved in protecting our future, something else was breaking quietly behind the scenes, our intimacy. Caroline started pulling away from me, both physically and emotionally. I know I was working long hours because building a business doesn't come with a time clock, but I still made time for her. Yet whenever I tried to be close, she'd pull away. She'd say she was too tired, or she had a long day, or she was stressed about some meeting or target she didn't hit. It became routine. Weeks would pass, and there'd be nothing. No warmth. No spark. Just polite conversations. She started staying out more. She'd tell me she had dinner with a potential client or was closing a sale out of town. I'd ask who the client was, and she'd just say that she didn't want to jinx the deal. Then came the business trips, sudden travel for meetings she had never talked about before. She'd pack quickly, leave without giving many details, and return even colder than she left. Something didn't feel right, but every time I brought it up, she had this way of flipping it. She'd accuse me of not appreciating her hustle, of doubting her loyalty. And the way she said it, it made me feel guilty. So I'd back off. Again. Because I loved her. And all the while, that financial advisor, the same guy she insisted I hire, started coming around the house more. He'd say he needed me to sign something or that we had to go over estate planning papers. He was always calm, professional, and polite. Nothing ever seemed out of place. And Caroline acted like it was all standard protocol. She even encouraged me to sign whatever he brought. Told me it was just legal housekeeping. I didn't bring in my own lawyer to look at anything because, well, I trusted her. One Tuesday, I came home earlier than usual. A last-minute meeting got canceled, and I figured I'd go home on time, maybe even have dinner with Caroline if she hadn't already eaten. When I walked into the house, I could hear muffled voices coming from a hallway leading to our den. So I followed the sound quietly, and I saw Caroline and the financial advisor in a compromising position. And as soon as they noticed me, they both sprang up like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. There was this awkward silence before either of them spoke. The financial advisor was the first to break it, putting on that professional tone he always had. "Oh, hey, Peter. I was just dropping off some paperwork for Caroline to review. Figured I'd save us both a trip." He waved a manila envelope. Caroline, who looked like she was about to break into sweat, jumped in and said she had come home early because she wasn't feeling well. "Migraine," she mumbled. I just needed to lie down. Neither of them could look me in the eye. I nodded and said nothing, playing dumb. But let me be clear, I didn't believe a damn word they said. Their body language gave it all away. You don't stand that close to someone you're not supposed to be close to. You don't look that guilty unless you have something to hide. I knew something wasn't right. That night, once Caroline was asleep, I went into my home office and pulled up the footage from the exterior security cameras that were installed years ago after a string of break-ins in the neighborhood, just enough to monitor the outside. I scrolled through the last 2 weeks of footage. And that's when the picture started coming together. The financial advisor had been to the house multiple times during the work week. And surprisingly, my wife is always home. These meetings are always in mid-afternoon when I am at home. Sometimes he parked a block away and walked in. Other times, he stayed for hours. That wasn't normal. No financial advisor makes that many house calls, and certainly not at those hours. It didn't take a genius to know what was going on. Still, I wanted more, so I reached out to a home surveillance company I had used before in my company. I told them I needed some routine maintenance and audio integration. I asked for discreet placement. The job was done in 2 days. Caroline assumed it was just our yearly tech tune-up. She didn't question it. Then I began waiting. Days passed. A week. Then 2. Nothing. No visits. No suspicious audio. I began wondering if maybe they sensed something, if I had tipped them off somehow, without meaning to. I almost gave up hope. But then, about 4 weeks in, I got what I was waiting for. It was a Thursday evening. I was going through the recordings like I usually did. Caroline had come home earlier that day, around 2:30 p.m., alone. About 20 minutes later, the financial advisor arrived. He used the side gate. I clicked into the audio files and started listening. At first, it was casual talk. But then the conversation took a turn. I heard the financial advisor say, once the assets are moved into the trust and he's out of the picture, there's nothing he can do. I paused the clip. That wasn't just infidelity. That was premeditated betrayal. Caroline's voice came next. Okay, she said. Then I watched them kiss from the camera, and then they walked toward the bedroom. I didn't have cameras in that room, not because I forgot, but because I didn't think I'd need one. But I didn't need to see what happened next. I already knew. That was the night I stopped being a husband trying to make things work and started being a man preparing for war. I didn't sleep that night, and the next morning I booked the earliest slot with my lawyer, and I didn't go in alone. I also brought in a forensic accountant, someone who specialized in uncovering hidden financial manipulation, theft, and anything that smelled like fraud. I needed to know the truth, and I needed to know exactly what Caroline and this advisor were trying to do to me. It didn't take long for Caroline to make her next move. 2 days later, she walked into the house casually holding a folder. I was in the kitchen when she approached me with this calm, business-like tone. She said, "Babe, these are the documents the advisor mentioned. It's for transferring some of our assets into a trust. It's for protection and tax benefits." Then she smiled and said, "You'll thank me later." Now, under normal circumstances, the way she presented it might have worked. She sounded like she was doing us both a favor. In the past, I probably would have just signed without blinking. But this time, I was watching her closely. She tried to keep it casual, but she was pressing a little too hard. When I asked her to leave the documents with me so I could look them over properly, she hesitated for a second, then said, "Sure, of course, just don't take forever." After she left the room, I immediately packed those documents into a secure folder and took them straight to my lawyer and the forensic accountant. After days of going over every line of those documents, they gave me the bombshell. The papers weren't just about asset protection or tax efficiency. They were a trap. What Caroline and the financial advisor had drawn up was a legal shell game, one that would have moved all of my privately owned and our jointly owned assets into a new trust. But here's the twist. The trust would be controlled solely by Caroline. I would be listed as just a member, someone who could be consulted or notified, but with no real say. In plain English, I'd be signing over everything and locking myself out of my own life's work. But it didn't stop there. Tucked at the back, almost hidden like an afterthought, was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. It stated in legal jargon that I was not allowed to talk about our finances, our business dealings, or even our relationship with anyone. If I did, I could face legal action. It's clear that they were laying the groundwork to erase me, financially, emotionally, and legally. And they wanted to make sure I couldn't even speak about it once they pulled the trigger. I didn't sign anything. I told her I was still reviewing the documents, and she gave me a smile. But I kept watching the cameras. At that point, they hadn't been back to the house in a while. But I came home one evening and checked the footage like I always did. This time, I saw Caroline pacing the living room on a call. She was talking to him. I'll never forget what she said. As soon as he signs the documents, I'll file for separation. If he tries to fight it, I'll just divorce him fully. He doesn't have a chance if it comes to court. I'll crush him. She was actively planning my financial death. But what she didn't know was that I already had a team watching her moves. And I was about to strike first. So, when I finally had the full audit in my hands, I knew I had to act fast. I forwarded every recording, every document left out, every file the forensic accountant had uncovered. He had traced transfers, flagged inconsistencies, and basically showed me, in numbers, how the woman I loved was spending my money recklessly and was plotting to erase me from my own life. The plan was straightforward. We froze every account that had my name on it, especially those we co-owned. Then we formally fired the advisor. My lawyer sent him a direct notice, and we added a cease and desist right along with it. At the same time, I filed a dual lawsuit, one civil suit against the advisor for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty, and one against Caroline for conspiracy and financial misconduct. And yes, I also filed for divorce that same day, all in one sweep. Caroline came home that night and found out when her access to everything was denied. She was locked out of all the shared accounts, the company resources, and even the online dashboards she once managed. She went ballistic, screaming, accusing, pacing, trying to guilt-trip me, and trying to act confused. But I didn't flinch. I told her everything was now in the hands of legal counsel, and that we'd communicate through lawyers moving forward. The thing she didn't know at that time was that I had caught even more footage from the hidden cameras before taking action. A week before the legal bomb dropped, she and her advisor lover met again in the house. So when it came time to file, we had a rock-solid, airtight case. And we made sure to be ready for their reaction. The fallout hit fast. The financial advisors firm launched an internal investigation the moment we served them with our lawsuit. Apparently, they had no idea how deep he'd gotten involved with a client. By the end of the second week, the firm fired him and released a statement about their zero-tolerance policy for ethical breaches. Word got around in their industry. And just like that, his career took a nosedive. Now here's where it gets messy. Caroline tried to throw him under the bus in court. She claimed he manipulated her, made all the financial decisions, and even hinted she was coerced. But that move backfired hard. The advisor, seeing how she was trying to escape the blame, turned around and sued her for defamation and breach of private agreement. It was chaos. And I just sat back and let the lawyers handle it. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, my legal team presented her with a settlement. It was simple and fair. She would walk away with only what we could prove was hers. Not a dime more. She rejected it, obviously still thinking she could manipulate the outcome. But part of the plan was to make the case linger in court. Her legal fees piled up, while my team focused on slowing down the timeline strategically. After 8 long months, the court gave its ruling. We had mountains of evidence, emails, recordings, financial trails, and behavior patterns that proved she acted in bad faith. The judge wasn't amused. He awarded me control of most of the assets, including the business and private properties she tried to sneak into that trust. Caroline walked away with far less than I originally offered. And the little she did get, most of it went straight into paying her legal bills. Eventually, after months of back and forth in court, with legal fees piling up on both sides and their dirty laundry now part of public record, both Caroline and the financial advisor finally cracked. They reached out through their lawyers to ask for a settlement. I won't lie, part of me wanted to drag it out even longer because I wanted them to feel what it was like to be powerless, to sit in uncertainty every day, like I did when I found out the woman I loved was plotting with another man behind my back. I gave them conditions. For Caroline, it was simple. She had to forfeit any claim she had or thought she had in my business. She agreed. Honestly, I think she realized she had lost whatever leverage she thought she had. The settlement went through. She disappeared after that. I don't know if she and the financial advisor ended up together. I doubt they did. But the truth is, I stopped caring. I had to. After everything settled, I'm just grateful I caught on in time. Grateful for the people who helped me piece the puzzle together. Grateful that what I built didn't crumble in the hands of those who never cared about it in the first place. What do you think about the whole thing? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.